Hey there, welcome along again. Thanks for coming back if you've come back, or thanks for dropping by for the first time. So today I just wanted to add a bit more information to this whole issue about looking at our foods from a chemical point of view. So this is what we currently have. I've shown this on my magic whiteboard before. So this is what we currently have. This is what everyone will tell you, that our foods are based on this principle. The calorie, which is completely redundant and unfit for purpose, and we need to move away from it. The calorie leads us into obesity, not out of it. Pretty simple statement. Okay, but let's just go with it. So what we do know is that carbohydrates and proteins generate 4 calories of heat energy per 1 gram that we burn in a bomb calorimeter in a controlled environment. So just think about that, okay? For every 1 gram we burn, we set fire to, we get a match. Well, we don't, we get an ignition unit, we set fire to it, and it produces 4 calories. Fat produces 9 calories of heat energy per 1 gram that we burn. Okay, so fairly simple. Now, I don't deny that, that's absolutely fine. However, it's got nothing to do with us. We don't burn anything. So when you hear people in the gym saying, I'm burning this many calories, or how many calories this contains, I'm burning it. You're not. You don't burn anything. Our bodies are not incinerators. Our bodies are huge walking, talking chemical reactors. So we don't burn anything. When's the last time you dropped anything into your stomach and set fire to it? So we don't do that. It's as simple as that. So there's a much better way of looking at your food. And that's from a chemical composition. So our bodies are chemical reactors. So you actually want to know what chemicals are in these foods. And it's that which gives a better clue as to those foods that will add body fat to us very quickly and easily, and those foods that will not, because the chemicals that they contain don't really allow that. So let's look at that. Okay, so I think we're probably a long way past that effect where we think that eating fat makes us fat. I think we're a long way past that, aren't we? I think everyone understands that. So eating fat will clog our arteries and kill us over time. There seems to be no denial of that. But eating fat is not the actual thing that makes us look fat. So aesthetically, eating fat doesn't make us actually that fat. Our body emulsifies it. So bile, you've probably all tasted bile in your time. Unfortunately, if we've been sick, we've tasted bile. Bile emulsifies fat, which means it breaks it down, and then we generally pass it through our system. We don't really digest it. It doesn't pass through the walls of our intestines and into our body. So fat doesn't necessarily make us fat. So let's have a look at this. So from a chemical point of view, we have alcohol and sugars. Okay, so they are both made up of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen in huge amounts. Okay, and they're probably the two worst foods, or the most guilty foods, for adding body fat to us. So that body fat that we can all see is generally caused by these two. And a big reason for that is the fact they are not digested. And here's a huge issue that we're looking at here. So we talk about foods in such a simplistic term, but the way in which our bodies absorb or assimilate or utilize food is very, very different. When we go out and get drunk, when we go and eat a high sugar food, a bar of chocolate, biscuits, sweets, they're all high in sugar, simple sugars, and high in alcohol. When we eat those or consume those, when we consume alcohol, do we get drunk the night that we drink it, or 24 hours later? And when we eat sugars, candy bars, sugar bars, sweets, do we feel the effects of that sugar rush within 20 minutes or so, or do we feel it 24 hours later? And that's because they're not digested. They're so high in sugar, they pass through the stomach lining into the bloodstream, where they effectively are now within our bodies. And there's a whole other conversation to have about what's inside our bodies and what is not. I'll come back to that at a later date. But essentially these two, because they're not digested, they come straight through into our blood. Any amount of excess sugar in our blood is actually a poison for us. And the only way we can get rid of that is by producing a huge amount of insulin. And then that will, not by magic, but by a long process, eventually enable, through various functions of the body, for those sugars to be removed from the blood and stored as body fat. And that's the key to this. Once these chemicals are inside our body has to deal with them. Whilst they're inside our stomach and our gut and our intestines, they're not inside our bodies. I'll explain that another day. So essentially these two are probably the worst for us for increasing our levels of body fat. Okay. What we've got after that then are all of your carbs. So your complex carbs, everyone talks about these all the time, you all know them. So potato, rice, pasta, bread, cereal. Pretty simple. And again, they're all of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, in a lesser degree than those, but again, carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Okay, and then, if I can find another colour pen, what we have then are obviously your fats, which we've kind of covered in terms of saying they're not as detrimental to our levels of body fat as we used to think, but they are detrimental to our health in the long term. So I think most people are aware of that. You can choose to eat your fat or not, that's up to you. But essentially, if we can avoid it, that's great. In small amounts, not an issue, but just be aware it can build up over time and clog our arteries. Again, no secret there, I don't think. But it's not the enemy that these are. You know, in terms of reducing body fat or preventing us putting on the aesthetic fat that we see, these two are the big ones. So again, carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Now, one thing should stick out here pretty obviously and pretty quickly is that the fats that we eat are exactly the same as the fats that we store, and they're both made of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. And essentially, the fat on our body is this, and we know obviously that we can convert those into that and those into that. And then of course, over time, if we need to, we then take that out of there and convert that into energy. If I can write that so far away. So when we need it, desperately, we can take the body fat away from our bodies and convert it again by a long process into energy that we might use to live, because body fat is an energy reserve. Now there's one key difference to all of this, okay, and those are your proteins. So if you remember back to the first whiteboard I had up, it said that proteins and carbohydrates produce the same amount of energy, 4 calories per gram, which again is true when you burn it. But here's the big difference for us. So protein, so those are essentially all of your meats and eggs, dairies, that sort of thing, fish. So I think we know what those are. Again, there's a new thing out there with all these new marketing tools of saying these cereals have, contain more protein, or these beans have protein, or whatever else. A lot of vegetarian foods or a lot of vegetable matter have protein in it, but it's not protein that we can always liberate, that we can always assimilate. So there's an issue there. This marketing that's been going on now saying, hey, we can get protein out of everything. We simply can't. But here's the thing for us that's really beneficial. Protein is, again, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and really important, nitrogen. And that's a massive benefit. So whilst this might well burn in a bomb calorimeter and create 4 calories of heat energy, you are not dropping protein into your stomach and your stomach sets fire to it. Your stomach breaks it down initially, and it's passed on down through the intestines to be broken down more and more and more until we can liberate the amino acids we need from it. But we can gain no energy from protein. So you can, I've said to my clients before now, you can eat a whole chicken if you like. It'll give you no energy. It'll give you the building blocks of life, but it won't give you energy. So this, because of this nitrogen here, this nitrogen helps the other 3 bind together. And your body finds it incredibly inefficient to try and break the carbon away from, to break the nitrogen away from the carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So essentially you can look at protein very differently. You can essentially say it's got 0 calories. If you want to use a calorie, you can say it's got 0 calories. And now you're getting somewhere in the range of understanding foods that you can consume without adding to our levels of body fat. We can add to that, obviously, veg, pretty much all our veg, obviously apart from your potatoes, your root crops, and all your salad items. Okay, and obviously the last one, water. Okay, they're obviously easy to consume, will create no body fat on us, no problem at all with that. So it's a very simple way of looking at it, that you need to understand that from a chemical point of view, we have foods that chemically are identical to our body fat and can be stored as such. And we have foods that, because of their chemical combination, cannot be used as an energy store, cannot be used as an energy source, and therefore will not be stored as body fat on us. So it's a really easy way to look at it, and it's how I've looked at it now for over 20 years, for myself, for my clients. And once we get into that system, they find it incredibly easy and far less fussy, because all of a sudden now every food is open to us, and all we need to do now is look at the timings through the day of those food groups. So I hope that helps a bit more. I'll illustrate the timings of the foods, and we'll come back and put them on together. Okay, thanks for joining me. See you again.